wanted to query my novel last year in November. But then was busy like beta reading other people's work, and I was doing an ARC read and all those things. I was talking to Claire actually. She was like, okay, so you want to query, but your novel isn't completely ready. I'm like, no, I'm just busy editing it. She's like, yes, but maybe just have it completely ready before you query. And I'm like, well, people are not going to get back to me in like 8 weeks, so I think I'll be fine. And she's like, as karma would have it, you would probably have someone be like, oh my gosh, I want to read it. Then I'm like, hold up, I made the decision to leave my querying for this year. And so that is where we are standing at the moment, querying. Woohoo.
And I think that's everybody's fight, because I had the same issue before I queried Destiny. Like, do I finish these last edits? Do I wait for the beta reader to finish the last 5 chapters? And I'm glad I did, because I ended up changing the last 5 chapters from that beta reader's feedback.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like kind of trust your gut to know if it's ready or not.
Absolutely. Today I am just doing mango. I had a fight with my daughter getting her to school today, so I had no time to
I think you need
boil
a
water.
little bit more than mango. A little tequila on there as well.
If I drink, I don't.
Same. Well, I have hot chocolate today because I was just vibing with hot chocolate today. But also it was raining. This is like pancake and... No, not you, American pancake. I refuse. That is not pancake. That is a flapjack. It was pancake weather. So I was like, pancake and hot chocolate. Can't go wrong with that.
Well, that sounds so good. Are you ready for this?
Ready? Freddy. I don't know who Freddy is, but I'm ready for him. Hello everyone and welcome to Tea and Tales. I'm Madeline Now.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in, for commenting and sharing our posts. We especially want to thank Deborah Designs and Lisa Beverly. Today we have our first author spotlight of season 2. She is an indie author, put out her debut book last year, and we're super excited to have her on.
Without any further ado, say hello. No, I'm just kidding, but I'm very serious about this. We are very excited to have Olivia McCarthy on. Well, congratulations on being a published author. That is super exciting.
Thank you.
What book is it and what genre do you write?
Okay, the book is Reach, and I selected to use the pen name of just O. McCarthy for this book just because it's a YA, so like teen level, dystopian sci-fi. When you write a book and you are appealing to teenage boys with the book, sometimes seeing a very feminine name on the cover can be a little off-putting. Now, that's not to say that there is like widespread issues there. It was just that was the right choice for the book, for the cover. As far as I was going, I have a copy of my book right here. Oh, there it is. Yeah, made me so happy when I finally got to hold it in paperback form. I was like, oh my gosh, it's real. I love this book. Made me really excited that it was here. So thank you.
That is such an accomplishment. As a writer, you do want to be published one day, and you do want people to read your novel and have it up on their bookshelves and telling other people about their novels. But that is really fantastic. Like, just the fact that you have that in your hand, in front of you, is an achievement in itself.
I would agree.
Especially with 5 kids.
I know. I'm just a little crazy. I'll admit it. It's fine.
Like, sheesh. I hope some of your kids help you write, because honestly, like, nobody needs to do chores around the house. They can just help do the writing.
That would result in some very creative spelling. But yes, some of the things I've read that my children have written, I'm like, I'm not sure what this means because this is just a bunch of letters. But it's great. Like, thank you for writing. Keep writing. This is amazing. But also, could you read me what you wrote? Because I can't read it. I actually have an education degree, and so I'm very aware of how it's really exciting to see the kids write their own stories, which has been really, really fun. Of course, then they want my help editing them, and that's where I have to ask a lot of clarifying questions, but it's great. Like, I'm here to support this.
I think that's a point we haven't covered much in this podcast is children writing and encouraging children's writing. I know when I was a kid, I was told I couldn't spell. I was told that I was terrible at grammar, so I didn't write until I was in junior high when we took an assessment and my assessment came back putting me in the 99th percentile. And my teacher came up to me and said, "Where did this come from?" That's when the first time I was told that I could write. I love that you encourage your kids to write and that you're encouraging them to continue forward no matter what level they're on, that it's just great that they're doing it.
Absolutely. It's funny that you're saying this, Sarah, because I have an older sister. She's 3 school years ahead of me. So she was a senior. I was a freshman. I walked into my first honors English class and she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you're Katie's little sister. She was one of my best writers ever." And I was like,
no pressure.
Thanks. Like, what do you say to that? And I think one of the things that I've really had to overcome with writing my own book as an adult is the disbelief or not having the confidence, because there were a lot of voices who told me throughout my life that I wasn't going to be able to do something. I think honestly, probably the loudest voice was my own internal one. I never did this, so there's no way I could do that. Or I have 5 kids, so there's no way I could, do this. Or like, that's too much. That's too crazy. I've actually spent the past 7 years trying to prove to myself that I can do the things that I tell myself I can't. So the first thing I did was run a marathon. And then the second really big thing I did was finish a full-length novel. And then the third really big thing I did was publish it. So it takes time, but I've done it. And all those things are extremely similar. If you have that voice of disbelief that's coming from, from your own internal self, you can prove yourself wrong. And it is really fun to do that, actually.
I think as writers, even though we can be part of writing communities and social media where people support us there and things like that, it can be a very lonesome journey in some ways, because you are literally in front of your computer or on your desk writing by yourself. Naturally, then, not only the characters are in your head, like the voices in your head, but you have your own voice in your head that kind of keeps on discouraging you and be like, "No, you aren't as great as Emily Henry." And then I'm like, "You're very right, I won't be." It's fine, I'll just go lie in bed now. Then you hear other writers and they, like you said, go through the exact same thing, and you're like, okay, so maybe that is not just me.
Exactly. And I tried to write it in such a way that you would feel comfortable having a teen reader read it. This is me having a child who is a YA aged reader, and me knowing as a parent that there is a bit of a gap there with some of the explicit things, some of the language, some of the levels of violence that are included in these books that are written into the YA genre. So I was really intentional about trying to craft a story that had high stakes and a really great world, but also didn't have the spice or the swearing or the on-page graphic violence. And of course, it's a dystopian, so there's violence implied. It's good to have options. So I hope that my book is an option for parents who feel their kids aren't ready for some of the other content that you might find in a YA book.
I have friends now and family who have the YA readers and the older teenage readers looking for that kind of book for their teenagers, because it is harder to find these days. I want my children to grow up first and to enjoy a story. You can write a story without it.
Right. And, I think that one of the really great things about the book community, there are books that fit every reader's comfort level. When I was doing my ARC signups to a woman who had reviewed a book that was a comp to mine, gave it 5 stars, I reached out to her, and I can't remember who she was right now, but she was great. And I was like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this ARC?" It was so nice that she was just willing to be like, "Hey, thanks for writing what you write. This isn't really my fit, but I'll still support you by sharing your things." There is a space for everybody in the book community. You can choose to not consume, and that you can still be supportive. And I thought that was just so cool.
I love this little post that I have posted on my social media before, where it says supporting an author can cost you nothing by just sharing, liking, commenting, and word of mouth.
Absolutely.
And it's the simplest things that you can that can help an author so much.
Absolutely. I had a bunch of authors that I've connected with who, shared like happy release day to Olivia and her book Reach. And it was really sweet because it was like, wow, look at all of these people that are now seeing my book. And maybe it's not going to be for 98% of them, but for the 2% of them that do decide to try it out, like that's so cool. Like, thank you for helping me make those connections. And I think that is the real gift of social media and the real gift of community building.
I want to step back a little bit into something that you said, because you said terminology that we have not said on our podcast before. Can you explain to us a little bit about how does an ARC, an ARC read, work? What is it?
An ARC reader or an ARC reader is an advanced reader copy. And what happens is the author will try to find people who will receive a free, usually an e-copy of a book. And then that free copy is given in exchange for a review. And this helps with your visibility on like search engines like Amazon and, those other places. So the advanced reader copies are just such a gift, and they've really helped me build connections with some new readers, and that's been really fun.
It's one of those parts of the book launch that is so important and that readers can really get more involved into.
Absolutely. And it's really fun because a lot of times your ARC readers become people that you can count on for future books.
You mentioned something about your Pomodoro timing technique that you use. Do you still vibe with that or not so much?
I love Pomodoro timing. Pomodoro just means tomato because the guy who invented this had a tomato kitchen timer and he used this tomato timer. I like to do 2 20-minute timers where I like set a timer on my phone, pull up my Spotify for Writers playlist. They have like a whole channel and it's really great. It's like just soft music with like rain. Then I write for 20 minutes, timer goes off. I tend to have really bad posture when I'm writing because I'm like a gremlin, like hunched over and like, ooh, what's happening next in the story? So kind of stretch out and make sure like my foot hasn't totally fallen off from lack of circulation, all that. And so I'll do the 2 20-minute Pomodoro sessions with then 5 minutes in between for breaks. If you guys can't tell, I'm a total pantser. Like I do not plot. So I know that can stress a lot of writers out, but it's me. Like I can't help it. So I sit down and my characters tell me what's happening and it happens.
A woman after my own heart. I love it.
Pantsers unite.
But I also feel like as a mom, that's half of what you have to do. I have a 4-year-old and right now she's at preschool. And that means I only have 2 hours to get everything down, which means I can't spend 2 hours planning every day. Let's get it down. Let's go. I just feel like it's a mom thing too.
It is. And honestly, I think part of it too is that as a mom, like I am deep in the thick. I spend so much time in the land of baby. I can pretty much play Candyland with, one eye open and like not really paying attention to it. So like, what am I doing? Well, I'm probably daydreaming about my book and I'm probably doing some planning or imagining some scenes then. I just can't write them down.
Voice notes are the best thing that has ever happened in my life because literally I'll be having an idea and I'm like, this is going to take way too long to type this out. So let's just record this quickly.
That is a fantastic idea. And I actually haven't done that, but I will now. Like that's fantastic.
Can we talk a little bit about becoming a self-published author? Both Nell and I are going for the traditional route. There's a whole perspective on that we don't have. As a indie author, how did you go about finding the things to use to get your manuscript into the right formats for paperback, for hardcover, for which ones did you find that you love to use the most?
I really had to come to terms with the idea that there's 2 different routes towards publication and neither is necessarily better than the other, but one's going to fit your spot in life a little better. And so like that could mean like financially you might not have the capital to invest in, you know, your manuscript at this time. Or it could mean that like you feel really intimidated by marketing. I kind of ended up going down this big deep dive of the differences between the two. And then I was able to connect with a bunch of indie published authors through social media and to ask them questions like, how is this working? How do you do this? And they were so kind. What I discovered was that the self-published or independent or indie published author has to run multiple aspects of the business of being a writer. In order to be a successful author, you do have to think about how you're investing your time and your money and your resources. Down to was that I realized I was scared of marketing, but I've been telling myself for 7 years that I can do things that are hard. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn more. I'm gonna figure this out. So I actually started looking into hybrid publishing companies. I kind of was delving into it, and I ended up being really glad that I didn't go with any of those. I ended up just asking all these questions and determining that the right fit for me was going to be going towards the independently published path. And again, it was really the fact that I realized I was scared of something that I could learn. And then also the other thing is I have 5 kids, and my ability to do timeline things looks really different than most people. Having done this for so many years, as far as being a mom now, I do know kind of what to expect and what my limits are. And I was like, okay, with independent publishing, I can control the timing. I can control how fast or how slow I do things. Having that flexibility of timing was really the big thing for me. And I know there are many publishers who are fantastic, who will work with people and their schedules and all that. I'm very aware of that. But just for me, the right fit, it was going to be to go independently publishing my own book. So I did.
I love that answer because people ask me all the time, why are you trying to go traditional publishing? And I say, because I looked into indie publishing and decided it doesn't fit me. It's so important to really dig in and decide and learn what it takes to do it. So what kind of software did you use and resources did you use to get your book published?
I hired a formatter because, again, I'm aware of my limitations. Knowing that I have this ancient old computer and knowing that I have 5 kids and that there is a steep learning curve, it wasn't that I couldn't learn it and that I don't intend to learn it. I wanted to put out a book that didn't look like it was my first attempt. And I knew that things like formatting tend to be more challenging for me. I get a little confused by how the whole margin thing works on the page. I had my cover designer who I contracted with actually does formatting too. So I paid for that package, and working with her was just amazing. And it just took something off my plate and let me focus on where I wanted to put my energy at that time. And I didn't want to put my energy into formatting. It was not something I needed to do in the middle of learning all the other things that come with publishing your first book. Like, we're just talking a landslide of information. Sometimes delegating is the best move. And so I delegated that task. As far as the other things I did to get ready, I wrote my book entirely in Google Docs. I had a reel I posted probably about a month ago about my book crimes, and one of them was that I wrote a whole book in Google Docs. And
I 1000% do that.
yes, it's just easy and familiar for me. And then I worked with an editor. I was able to find a fantastic editor through the Bookstagram community. I read her book before I hired her to be my editor, but it gave me such a great sense of who she was as a person, the type of content she wrote, and she was just so invaluable. Sometimes people think that indie authors are like going alone. You do in many ways, but you also find people who are so supportive and people who help. And there needs to be a team of people behind every book I write because I need support. And I know, like, having my editor, she took a story that was okay and she helped me make it much, much better. Definitely, in order to get ready, I had to make sure we had some money put aside to invest in the book. And then the people that I found that I felt very comfortable spending the money with. And So there's a process there that when you go the traditional publishing route, you already have people who are right there to help you, whereas I kind of had to go through a little bit of a vetting process.
I think in both scenarios, whether you go traditional publishing or indie publishing, I think the number one thing is to do your research. Whether you are a researching agent, whether you are researching an editor or a book blurb writer, sometimes, you do take the chance and you get an editor and you just feel like, I wasn't vibing with this person, and that's perfectly all right. But then you kind of know that did not work for me, so I shall try something different. But yes, no, absolutely 1000%, like, do your vetting, do your research, because it can only help you.
Exactly. I have quite a few people that I've connected with who are pursuing traditional publishing, and many people I've connected with who are pursuing independent publishing. There's the whole process. You're writing a book and then it splits. And then you have their process of querying and their process of trying to sign with an agent, and then, having your book go on sub and all that. And then you also have, the indie authors who then are finding their own editor. Like, there is this whole, how much information can you take in and how much are you able to, do that research before you move on to the next step. And I think the people who are able to slow down and to do that research, it just gives you a leg up. Whichever path you take. Doing your research is probably the biggest thing outside of writing that goes into being an author.
And networking with people, asking them, has anybody heard of this editor and what do you know about them? Does anybody have experiences with this agent and what do you know about them? You can get fantastic advice and you can get fantastic warnings.
I had the great gift of having one of my friends, her sister wrote a book and independently published her book, and it came out, I think, in February this past year. I've been able to meet with her in person and just like talk book things, which has been fun. But I asked her, I was like, who designed your cover? I like your cover. It doesn't really fit my book because yours is a YA fantasy and mine is not. But she's like, oh, this is my person. And so I reached out and I talked to my cover designer and I hired her. And I have just... I love my cover.
But you're working on something new and it's not a young adult. But also, side note, is there going to be a second novel in your young adult series?
Yes. Okay. So I have a lot of ideas. And I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, but I've got like 1,000 of them. And I'm so excited because I have loved writing the YA dystopian. I think that is such a fun genre. My oldest is almost 12. So I get to share this with her as she's kind of coming into it. So the book, Reach, is the one that just released. And there's going to be 3 books. So it's a trilogy. And I'm hoping to get the trilogy completed by this time next year. So I'm hoping to have all 3 books out fast. I know book 2 is coming in 2025. And I'm really, really hoping to push book 3 out quickly. I did find with writing my second novel that it goes a lot faster. I just had a better understanding of story and flow and how to do it and what it takes to write it. What I've read after having a baby for that whole first year on my Kindle in the middle of the night feedings is romantic comedies. I think I've read like 8,000 of them at this point. I'm so excited to write some of my own because, write what you know. And so I've got like lots of genres that I love. And romantic comedies have been there through some harder times. And I think it's important to have something light and fluffy, like a blanket that just kind of cuddles you up and that, is one of those feel good stories. That's my next genre. I booked my edits for this one too, but I'm hoping for a June 2025 release for my first romantic comedy book. So big things in 2025. One of the other things as far as like a business decision goes, understanding that marketing is easier by a lot for romance than it is for young adult dystopian sci-fi. So we'll just say that like I kind of pushed myself into a niche with my first book, but I also do want to be able to keep creating books. And so by diving into maybe more broadly marketable genre, this will help me get my name out. This will help me be able to write more books. That's the goal, is to use my overactive imagination for good.
Olivia, I want to thank you for coming onto our podcast today. You have had so many words of inspiration and topics that I wasn't even expecting.
I'll be happy to come back anytime. Talking to you ladies is so much fun, and I do absolutely love listening to all of your guests. I've been really inspired by everyone you've had on and seeing the different styles, the different personalities, but still being united around our love of books, I think is such a cool thing. And also, like, how cool is it that we are all around the world?
It has absolutely enriched the writing process so much.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me on, and I so appreciate it.
We like to keep things short and sweet here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you love what we're doing here and you love our guests that we have on our writing community, you can go and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Tea Tales. And please go to that purple icon on your device and give us 5 stars and comment about how awesome we are and how awesome Olivia is, and that you're going to go read her book.
Yes, absolutely. Happy writing.
Bye!